Hello and welcome back to another episode of Exposing D&D 5e Monster CRs. Today we're going to take a look at the Meenlock, which is a new 4th position, highest viewed shorts on my channel. And this way we can get a really good look at what's going on with the Meenlock here, which is a small fae. So to jump into it, let's start looking at the base stats for our Meenlock over here, which consists of its armor class and hit points. We don't worry about the speed, doesn't really matter for CR purposes. So our Meenlock has a natural armor class of 15, and as I said before, it is a small fae, which only matters for purposes of hit dice, which it has 7 of, and a constitution of 12. We can also throw in wisdom and charisma if we wanted to, but it's not going to matter here because we don't have those traits to worry about. And this is supposed to be a CR2 monster. Now that we have our base stats out of the way, let's take a look at the skills section here and see what we have for our Meenlock. Well, right off the bat, our Meenlock has perception, stealth, and survival. Skills don't matter, so we're going to skip those. There's no damage resistances or immunities, or even vulnerabilities to worry about, so we can skip over that. And we have condition immunities for frightened, which doesn't matter, and its senses and languages, which doesn't matter as well. Surprisingly enough, for our skills section, we have really nothing here to look at for our Meenlock. And with that, let's move down into the traits and see what our Meenlock is doing here. First off, we have Fear Aura, and any beast or humanoid that starts within 10 feet of the Meenlock has to succeed on a wisdom save or be frightened. Since this is an all-the-time sort of thing, and triggers anytime there's someone within 10 feet and can't be resisted, we're going to add this in as a frightful presence similar to the Ancient Gold Dragon down here. And because of that, our monster is going to gain +7 effective hit points. Not a lot, but when you look at the base hit points of only 31, 25% of that is only going to net you a little bit anyways. Next, we have light sensitivity, which this doesn't matter either. And then lastly, we have shadow teleport. As a bonus action, the Meenlock can teleport to an unoccupied space within 30 feet of it, provided that both the space it's teleporting from and its destination are in dim light or darkness. The destination need not be within line of sight, which is pretty powerful. And because of that, I'm going to suggest that shadow teleport, being able to just do it as a bonus action, is very similar to Nimble Escape and probably gives us a +4 bonus. But before we get into that and the modifications here, let's go into the actions that it has. Now, the actions that it has is just claws. That's all our Meenlock can do. And with that, the attack bonus it has is +4. And then take a look at the rest of the damage. Well, it can do 7 points of slashing damage, and the target must succeed on a saving throw or be paralyzed. So we'll come up here and throw in the attack of 7 damage. And at the moment, that's all we have. This is it for our Meenlock. There's really not much to this little CR2 monster. But here's the thing, we haven't even added in anything for Shadow Teleport, and at the moment, we're only seeing a CR 1/2. And when we look at the chart as well, we'll see that the 37-38 hit points that it's getting from its effective rating is putting us in a range of CR 1/4. And it's expecting to have an AC of 13, but our Meenlock has an AC of 15, which is 2 over the expected, providing us a +1 shift down into the DCR 1/2. The same more or less is true for our OCR of only 7 points of damage. This puts us right into the CR 1/2 range, expecting an attack bonus of 3, and our Meenlock only has an attack bonus of 4. Well, because of that 4, that's a 1 difference, and results in a 0 shift in the OCR here, staying at 1/2. So that's where our Meenlock is currently. We haven't taken into consideration the Shadow Teleport, which is a little tricky, but with some simple math we can figure that out pretty easily. Now, our Shadow Teleport can only happen technically once out of 3 rounds of combat, and that's what we base everything on. So since the Meenlock can't continuously Shadow Teleport all the time, we have to take that into consideration. So let's take a free cell here and take a look at what the AC bonus should actually be for the 3 rounds of combat. Well, we'll take the 4, and we'll multiply it by 1/3, which is going to be 1 use out of 3 rounds of combat. And as we can already see here, this is going to turn into a 1.3. Obviously, we would want to round down, and that would only really supply us with a +1 AC bonus for the Shadow Teleport. It can only happen once every 3 rounds of combat. So if we come over here and just throw in something that adds in +1 AC bonus, like Constrict here, Now that we have Shadow Teleport and being thrown into dim light or darkness, this could possibly give us a chance to use stealth to hide again. So it is possible that the Meenlock is getting a +1 AC bonus from the Shadow Teleport as well, because if it dives into darkness, then it's effectively hidden and can't be found. And if that's the case, then attacking from darkness should give the Meenlock advantage, especially if it uses the stealth skill and hides as well. So if it hides and then decides to attack again once the players get close to where the Meenlock is hiding, we could more or less say, alright, similar to Nimble Escape, we would potentially get the +4 AC bonus, and going through the same math that we did over here, we would end up with, 1.3 as well for the attack bonus. So this is kind of where I got the idea from Shadow Teleport here, because there's no guidance on this ability whatsoever. And if we give it a +1 AC bonus as well, similar to the pack tactics from the Kobold here, we'll see that now our Meenlock has shifted just a little bit to a CR of 1. So we're getting closer to finding a challenge rating 2. And I believe this is probably the correct CR number for our Meenlock. So then what would we want to do to be able to get our Meenlock to a CR2? The easiest way I found that to be was to basically give it a multi-attack of 3. So if we switch this back to the full attack here, and let's say we go for a multi-attack of 3. Alright, well, we'll take the 7 points of damage and just multiply that by 3 to give us 21. And then we'll take that 21 and throw it into our rounds of combat, and simply all I have to do to save some time is multiply it by 3. Here's where we actually potentially get a CR2 Meenlock. As another point here, initially I suggested a multi-attack of 3. You can actually still get the CR2, provided that you use a multi-attack of at least 2, which is what I would recommend, especially if you're going to use this against players at much lower levels. Don't necessarily go with 3 unless you want a slightly deadlier Meenlock. It still is a CR2 by the terms here, but if we see, by switching this from 3 to 2, the OCR goes up to a 4, which is pretty deadly for our players at anywhere between, 2 to 5. And instead, you could still get the same bonuses by only doing a multi-attack of 2, and you'll still have the CR2 regardless because of its lower health rating. Giving it the extra attacks and allowing it to hit harder, as well as using Shadow Teleport, can put our Meenlock up into the range of the CR2 as it was printed. Otherwise, I truly believe this is supposed to be a CR1 and is an overrated monster. So with the Meenlock where we're at now and finding it as a CR2, what would I possibly do to modify this monster and make it a little more interesting? Well, considering that it has such a high stealth skill of +6 over here, I might consider giving it the Ambusher trait, which isn't going to do too terribly much, and only give it a +1 attack bonus. Luckily, we haven't shifted away from the CR2, but our OCR has jumped up to a 4. This is getting into the range of being a very deadly monster, especially Shadow Teleporting and getting around the area. What else might I give this Meenlock in the idea that it's supposed to be a kind of stealthy monster, especially if you read over its flavor text? Well, I might come down here and use maybe Surprise Attack. Well, if it's more or less trying to be a surprising monster, maybe we'll come in here and throw in a quick attack of something like, okay, 5 more points of damage on average if it gets the Surprise Attack in. Well, that will only net us a +1 DPR because it's only in the first round of combat, really. And again, we aren't really shifting our Meenlock around all too terribly much because it's only +1 extra DPR and it needs to be done on the first round of combat. So if you wanted the Surprise Attack feature of giving it a little extra bursty damage on the first round, you definitely want to have the Meenlock stealthed. That's going to be the most important part here. Alright, what about encounter building? Well, if you use Xanathar's Guide to Everything and come down to the solo monster challenge rating, we'll see that a CR2 monster can be used against 4 players at 2nd level, or 5 to 6 players at 1st level. After that, you can come down to the multiple monsters here and start using your Meenlock with a bunch of other monsters as well. And looking at the CR2 column, we could start putting 6 players up against 1 Meenlock at 2nd level. Then you could put 4 players to 1 Meenlock at 3rd level. And then you could do 2 players against 1 Meenlock at 4th. And then you start getting into a 1-to-1 basis at 5th level. So right around the 4th level is probably where you're going to want to start using the Meenlock. Then you can start other monsters as well. And then after that, from 5th level on, we would start seeing a 1-to-1 ratio up to 7th level, and then you can start swarming your players at 8th and 9th level as a 1-to-2. So for every 1 player, you could start having 2 Meenlocks at 8th, 9th, and 10th level. And then 11th level, we would see, a 1-to-3 ratio, and just on from there. And that's the Meenlock. Thank you for joining me this week as we exposed another D&D 5e monster CR. Join me again next week as we expose another monster and see what is going on with these monsters.